And then the last thing imposter syndrome can kind of be affected by is personality. And I know that's a pretty generic thing to say, but when it comes to personality here, I mean like specific traits or characteristics. For example, low self-efficacy. Self-efficacy here refers to your belief in your ability to succeed in any given situation. So if you have low self-efficacy, you're more likely to have imposter syndrome. It's like self-esteem. If you have a lower self-esteem, you're more likely to doubt yourself. The next one is perfectionism, and we're going to get into more of that later, but often people with perfectionism, it plays a very significant role in imposter syndrome. If you're a perfectionist, you might think that there's some perfect script for conversations and that you can't say the wrong thing if you're doing a presentation, for example. You may also have trouble asking for help from others and procrastinate due to your own high standards because you can never really achieve perfection, because perfection can be impossible. The last thing is neuroticism. It's a psychology term, but neuroticism is one of the big 5 personality dimensions. It is linked to higher levels of anxiety, insecurity, tension, and guilt. It's always like kind of linked to negative emotions. Like the 5 big personality dimensions include introversion, extroversion, and one of them is neuroticism. So I wanted to focus on the negative emotions here because if you have higher levels of anxiety or insecurity, tension, and guilt, you're more likely to feel like you're an imposter. So these are the 5 types of imposter syndrome. And while I'm going through this, I want you guys to kind of think which one you identify with the most, because I will be giving you like tips and tricks on how to overcome each individual one. And then at the end, I'll be giving you like just generic ones that you can also apply. But try to see which one you identify with so you can find something that's tailored for something that like is affecting you directly. So the first one is the perfectionist. This type of imposter involves, like this imposter syndrome involves believing that unless you were absolutely perfect, you could have done better. You feel like an imposter because your perfectionistic traits make you believe that you're not as good as others might think you are. A characteristic of a perfectionist type imposter syndrome would be that they always hold themselves to the highest standard. They are sometimes accused of being a micromanager by people they work with. And even, for example, like taking back the presentation example I used, if you're in class and you have a presentation or at work and you're doing a presentation, even if you do everything perfectly, you'll kick yourself because you forgot one tiny minor detail. You'll never settle for anything less than gold, and anything else is a failure to you. Like it's very black and white. The next type of imposter syndrome that I want to talk about is the natural genius. In this imposter syndrome type, you may feel like a fraud simply because you do not believe that you are naturally intelligent or competent at something. If you don't get something right the first time around, it takes you longer to master a specific skill, you'll feel like an imposter. So the characteristics are that they believe people are born talented or skilled, and they get frustrated easily and may often like switch between one hobby to another because they give up a bit too easily. And they see everyone around them as achieving success while they're the only ones failing. The third imposter syndrome is the expert. The expert feels like an imposter because they don't know every single detail or everything there is to know about a particular subject or topic. So, for example, if they usually tend to prepare themselves fully by diving into books or courses or trainings. They need to know every single minuscule detail about everything before attempting a big project or presentation, if we take the example I was talking about before. They usually will often avoid applying to jobs because they don't feel like they meet the qualifications. And even if they have been teaching or working or doing what they're doing for years and years and years, they still feel like they're not enough. They don't feel like they've reached the rank of expert because there's always more for them to learn. The fourth type of imposter syndrome is the soloist. These people, they're very hyper independent. They can only do things on their own. They can never ask for help or assistance. Like they can't. The characteristics is that they usually prefer solo tasks to group tasks. Like they wouldn't really want to do group projects. They like working on their own. They don't ask for help even if they desperately need it. And it's also possible for them to feel like an imposter because if they ask for help or got a specific like promotion by asking through connections, usually, which is the world functions, the job world or functions through connections. So if they get something through a connection, they'll feel like they're inadequate or they feel like an imposter because they didn't really do it themselves. The last type is the super person. This type of imposter syndrome believes that they believe that they must be the hardest worker or reach the highest levels of achievement possible. And if they don't, they're just a fraud. Like that's it. The characteristics are that they juggle multiple tasks at once, work, chores, schools, side businesses. They are often like working overtime. If they're in a group project, they're always working more than everyone else, or at work, they're always just doing more above and beyond. And this can often lead to them neglecting their family, their friends, or their hobbies in order to work more. They're just workaholics. So now this is like detailed like techniques of how to overcome each type. When it comes to the perfectionist, the GEQ method is best. The GEQ here stands for good enough quality. Now, I know that might be shocking to some perfectionists to just do good enough, but in other words, it's better to hand in something that's good rather than strive for the best. Perfectionists want to spend more time preparing, so they have to break that cycle with action. Just be more realistic. It's okay to do 75% rather than 100%, because often or not, your 100% is someone else's 150. So if you do 75%, you're going to be great. And the most important approach for this group is to learn to accept their mistakes and see them as an inevitable part of larger successes. So a perfectionist, like if we take the presentation example, when they make one mistake, like everyone makes mistakes, we're all human, and it's important to just, instead of like seeing it as world shattering, to try to learn from it and incorporate it into their education further or their job further or whatever the situation is. And just don't be afraid to make mistakes, because we all do, even your boss, even your professor. So there's nothing wrong with making a mistake. The next thing is the natural genius. To overcome your genius complex, you should try to cultivate a growth mindset. A growth mindset is that the belief that with effort, you can improve your abilities, your skills, and your talents. The opposite is a fixed mindset, which is what a natural genius has, which it's when they believe that people are born with talents or skills and they don't earn them. They're just born with it. So when you have a growth mindset, you'll start believing in the power of putting in concentrated effort towards your goals. Challenge yourself to practice the kinds of skills you don't master immediately, rather than labeling them as something you simply can't do. Pick up that thing you left to go, like the old hobby you left to go a long time ago. Just keep working at things, and eventually you'll get there, because practice does make perfect. The next thing is for the experts. Experts should recognize that there is a never end to knowledge. There's especially with the internet at our fingertips right now in today's day and age, there is so much for us to always know and learn, and you'll never be able to know everything. So instead of always trying to accumulate more knowledge and skills and knowing everything, try to only accumulate it on a need-to-know basis, making an effort to move away from hoarding knowledge and instead learning on the go can be a good way to challenge the behaviors that trigger feeling like an imposter. Recognizing that you're capable of improvising and learning knowledge in a shorter time frame will instill that with greater confidence and your abilities, and it will hopefully develop your sense of worthiness further. This means focusing 100% on accumulating one skill instead of dividing your attention to learn everything. And then when you try to focus on each individual thing, hopefully this will help you improve your imposter syndrome. Next, when it comes to the soloist, you should try to be objective. Treat yourself with the empathy you would treat others. If someone else asked for your help, you would probably do it and not think they were undeserving of their achievement either. If you help a friend with an essay or like peer review something or a presentation, and someone helps you with a small grammatical sentence, it doesn't mean you don't deserve it. It just means you need help, because no one's got anywhere in the world doing something on their own. Everyone always had help, honestly. That's the way the world works. So just be nice to yourself and try to be objective. Look at it from the other person's point of view. And it may be hard, but the problem of not asking others may be because you haven't found the right people. So just ask yourself, who are the top 5 people I spend the most time with right now? Just take a moment and think about that. And sometimes it might be hard because you are surrounded by a toxic environment, like toxic friends or family members, and you're not able to get out. And I completely understand that. But it's important to just try to be objective and look at it from another person's point of view first. And then hopefully with time, you'll be able to surround yourself by positive people and people who want to just not only help you be better, but you'll be able to help them. And that's kind of how the world works. The last thing is for the super person. Chances are, if you're running in super mode and you're workaholic and you're doing all these things, you're also a people pleaser. So you usually strive to do good, not only for yourself, but for others. You want to impress, and taking on extra responsibility is your idea to get there. Focus on yourself. Try to put your needs in front of other people for once. learn to resist the lure of external validation as the measure by which you gauge your self-worth. And try to draw healthy boundaries between your work and private time. Try to have a healthy work-life balance. Take I'm personally a workaholic. It's really difficult for me to just take time for myself. So start by taking a couple hours, one day a week, to just pick up an old hobby you used to like reading, or watch a show you want to watch, or just take time to do absolutely nothing. Just take a moment to yourself and pause, because sometimes that's all we need to do to ground ourselves and to move on. So these are just now generic tips and tricks to overcome imposter syndrome. These are 4 techniques that I personally find useful and interesting to do if you do feel like you have imposter syndrome. And then like this is the last thing I'm kind of gonna just talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Coup Method. The Coup Method was developed by Emily Coup. She's a psychologist, and it's based on grounding, and you have to be doing it consistently. So you need to catch yourself being negative and like having these intrusive imposter syndrome thoughts, and you need to try to correct it. So when it comes to positive affirmations, I know they sound cheesy. I know they sound like I see them on Instagram and on social media all the time, but it can be nice to hype yourself up. When you catch yourself having a negative thought, try to affirm it positively with a statement like, I did this, or I deserve this, or I can achieve this, depending on the situation you are in. When it comes to the safe space, I would recommend you identify a physical space where you feel comfortable. A room in your house, a park, a coffee shop, or just even going for a walk. When you get into your own head mentally, it can help to get out of it by doing something physically. So go on a mental health walk. I know it sounds pointless, but it is proven to actually improve mental health. Take a moment to yourself to ground yourself. And then the last thing is the mental image. So Emily Coup specifically, her mental image was just the image of a butterfly. This butterfly to her, for example, symbolized femininity and beauty and serenity and calmness. So you can pick your favorite animal or your favorite thing, pet, drink, coffee. Like I think of coffee and it just makes me happy right away and calms me down. So just think about a general mental image, and this can help you also get out of your own head. And anytime you have an intrusive negative thought, try thinking of this said mental image, and hopefully it will ground you and bring you back to kind of the norm. The next tip and trick that I have for you is to go mad for 30 minutes. I personally, like when I read about this technique, I just considered it overdramatic journaling. Because to do this, you just get a piece of paper and a pen and write down everything about you that you are trying to hide. Your most ridiculous beliefs, the worst parts about your character, and all the things that make you feel like a fraud. Write every absurd, intrusive thought you have down. And I want to let you guys know this exercise won't help get rid of these bad things, but externalizing them and putting them on a piece of paper can help you put them into perspective and feel better about them. Because when you read that piece of paper, you're going to realize how overdramatic this is, because you would like, if you read it and think of reading it to like talking about this, like try to be objective and think that you wrote this about someone else or something. It would be so mean and overdramatic to think that about anyone. So it kind of gets you out of your own head, then you realize that it's not as a big deal as it has to be. And even if you feel comfortable enough, you could share it with a trusted someone. And this would help you it brings good perspective, and you can have a laugh about it, because I did this before and it's honestly hilarious. The next thing I have for you is to keep a success file. So as I said, writing therapy has proven to be a great remedy for imposter syndrome. So another way you can apply writing therapy is that when you're feeling these self-doubts, you can pull a journal up and write 5 things you are grateful for in the moment. And then anytime you feel like an imposter, you can kind of look back on it and realize like you kind of achieved things. You can also capture your proudest moments of the day or any small wins you've accumulated. You can do this through taking a picture or checking a check mark off on your to-do list. When you do these steps by steps, just generically having a success file, you can document as many small or large moments you were proud of. You'll have something to look back on and be like, no, I did this. I deserve this. I don't have to feel like an imposter. The last tip and trick I have for you is to avoid comparing yourself to others. Everyone does this all the time, and it's really mentally unhealthy. So just try to avoid comparing yourself to others. Slow down. There is such a rush to complete so much while we're so young. We're just students. I understand seeing people our age and younger achieve such brilliant things can be overwhelming and make us feel like we are not doing enough. But it's important to acknowledge that and validate our feelings. And hopefully that will stop, we should stop comparing ourselves to others. We're all moving through our lives at our own paces. The more we compare ourselves to others, the worse we will feel about ourselves. It's a dangerous trap that we have to try to avoid. When we constantly compare ourselves to others, we waste precious energy focusing on other people's lives rather than our own. Comparisons often result in resentment, and this resentment is towards others, and then eventually we'll start to resent ourselves. These comparisons deprive us of joy. So hopefully, if you just take into consideration anytime you find yourself comparing yourself to others, you can try to integrate another method involved, because all these can kind of be used simultaneously. Like if you compare yourself to others, that's a negative intrusive thought. And then you can use the Coup Method to kind of help you out. And then look back at your success file. And then every once in a while, go mad for 30 minutes. But yeah, these are the tips and tricks I have for you. Thank you. Any questions?
Hello, Zein. That was really wonderful, and it really struck my heart, especially as you were like explaining all the different types of of imposters under the imposter syndrome. I would like to ask: is it possible to have a bit of everything that you just mentioned from each of the archetypes that you told us?
Definitely. Usually you'll be feeling more than one at the same time sometimes. And I personally, I identify with the natural genius. I always feel like I give up too easily. The same time, I find myself being a super person. So you'll often be doing two things at once, and you can have all of them. But when you look at them, you probably have 2 to 3, you can try to identify each method and try to correct it individually with the things I gave you.
My gosh, it really goes to show how much everyone probably in this world is a perfectionist to some degree, right? And it kind of messes with your head. Ankita, I believe you have something like some of your thoughts to share with us.
Hey Zein, thank you so much for this wonderful word. I had never imagined that this session would have been this wonderful and this insightful. And I'm very sure this is gonna help me personally a lot. And I would like to convey everything to my institute. It's again what you have said just now. Thanks a lot. And the most important part was how to overcome this syndrome. Like we know we are facing something, there is something uneasy and there is something uncomfortable, but we don't know how to overcome it. So thanks for that. That again, it's gonna really help me and help everyone a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was so sweet, Ankita. Guys, this is a safe space for everyone, and if you have any questions regarding, or maybe you can just share to everyone what you're going through. I will stop the recording.